Hi, this is Pastor Doug Venn, and I want this city. I am so glad that you can be here together with One Year in Mission and here with me and Gary Blanchard and the rest of the speakers you've been listening to so far. Today, in this part of our training, we're wanting to look on how we can find ways to fund your urban mission and to find how you can find those resources. First of all, I'd like to look at how did Jesus fund his mission to the cities? First, let's find, and in John chapter 6, verses 9 through 12, we see here that Jesus was able to then build his ministry through the sacrifice of young adults. And in this case, it was a young man. The Greek actually tells us that it uses the phrase, the young man. So here, the young man sacrifices his lunch, his, those rolls, the bread, as well as then those fish, and then he was able to feed the 5,000. So based on this example of Jesus Christ, on how he used that sacrifice of young people, I want you as a group to discuss and look on how you, as One Year in Mission, can actually build on that sacrifice to actually help fund our urban mission in the cities that God is calling you to be at, as well as the cities around the world. In Matthew chapter 21, verses 1 through 6, we actually see that Jesus, he borrows a limo. For this triumphal entry, he actually borrows a donkey to then go into the city of Jerusalem. And I find that interesting that actually Jesus, through the relationships and the network that he had in the cities, he was able then to actually borrow this when he had the need, and he was able to borrow the vehicle. So this gives us another principle on how we can fund our urban mission today. Is there a resource or an asset that you need for your urban mission in the city that God has called you to work in? If so, perhaps God has also given you favor. And if you develop those relationships just like the Lord Jesus did, then you can also borrow the limo to go into the city. So that's our second one. Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. Here, Jesus is actually working with the business leaders of the community. And I find this to be another great example of how Jesus worked in the cities. Another one in Luke chapter 8, verses 1 through 4, Jesus then also, here it says that he's actually funded by business women. So maybe in your city that there will be people, as you're serving the community and meeting the needs of the people groups, whether it's young people, maybe you're working and there's a health need, or maybe there's some other need that you are actually meeting from your urban center of influence or your Life Hope Center, that you are then going to actually, as you're meeting that need, there'll be people observing to say, what are those young people doing? What are they doing? And when those people ask those questions, you need to be prepared. And one thing that's helped me, and what I was coaching our team in SSD with One Year in Mission last term, if you can have your one-page outline that actually shows what you're doing, kind of the goals, what you're trying to do long term, and so then that way you can give it to them. And then that way these business women or men in the community can actually help fund your urban mission. So that's another one lesson that I learned from Luke chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. Then when we come to this next one in John chapter 11, verse 5, or actually in Matthew 21, 17 through 18, we see that Jesus, with his urban mission, he also relied on the hospitality of his friends. I know that our team in SSD, when we were doing this Mission to the Cities initiative last term, and we were looking, Anthony Stanier and our team, where can we find a place to stay to house our One Year in Mission team? Because everything is so expensive. And God provided a way where we were able to stay with a church member's house. They were in the process of renovating, and so we were able to have that, accept their hospitality. So that could be another way that Jesus, through his example of staying with friends, how are you going to then be able to help find housing or staff or for your One Year in Mission team? Because that will be one of the major expenses that we face in urban mission. So our next one is that we have that Jesus is found in Luke chapter 8, verse 1, as well as in Matthew chapter 9, verse 35. Jesus actually used public spaces, whether it was the temple, the market, or these other settings where the people gathered. Maybe it was the hillside where he preached the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus gives us this example, and we need to follow that as we look at our mission to the cities and how to find funding for this. And why do I say this? Because if you're going to put on a community program for the kids or of your neighborhood, where you're going to meet, it will actually affect your budget. And so I know in our time in Bangkok and church planting there, as well as with our one-year mission team across Asia during that I was involved with, the use and having access to a shopping mall or to a restaurant or to another public space is so vital. And when these business leaders can actually see what you're doing, you're then able to invite them to support your mission to the cities and your urban church planting as a result of having access to these public spaces. I know that many of your young many cities actually have public campuses. And we just heard, or we're going to hear from Jiwan Moon in his segment about public campus ministry. So if your team with Public Campus Ministry or PCM and One Year in Mission, if you guys were to combine forces and have a collaboration, then many of the universities, whether they're a state college or a university community college, through that student club, you're able to actually have access to the public space there on campus, whether it's a classroom, an auditorium, or something else. Maybe you're going to have a recreation event or an ongoing fitness class, and you actually need the gym. So using those public spaces is another way that we can find on how Jesus worked in his time, and actually we can apply that today. Let's go to our next part. In Matthew chapter 26, verses 18 through and 19, we see there that Jesus actually accepted the hospitality. And it was the time to go to the upper room, and Jesus sent the disciples into the city to say, hey, go to this guy's house, go and ask to see if I can use the room, and actually for the Last Supper. This principle of having the network and having friends in the community, Jesus gives us. And so I want to challenge you as a One Year in Mission team to say, how are you not only caring for the needs of our churches, but then how are you joining in this Mission to the Cities initiative of actually taking that next step to actually say, how are we serving the needs of the community? We always try to encourage people to use Christ's method alone, as we see it in Ministry of Healing, page 143. And in this, we see that when we mingle, when we sympathize, when we meet the needs and win the confidence of people, then we see their hearts are opened, and then we have access to those resources. I always ask a question, how much rent did Jesus pay during his 3.5 years of ministry? And if you look through the Bible, he was sleeping outside, or he accepted the hospitality of his friends, or in this case, he accepted the hospitality of the owner of the upper room. And so this is a great model that can be applied in creative ways all around the world. So we'd love to have you guys give your reports to Pastor Gary of your mission work in the cities, and so then that way we can continue to celebrate with the World Church on how you guys are making progress. How about our Adventist pioneers? How did they fund their mission to the cities? I've been doing analysis on San Francisco, and there is one case where the youth leader of the California Conference gave a challenge to the young adults to say that they wanted to start an urban center of influence, or a Life Hope Center, in San Francisco and in Oakland, and they voted as the young people to set up this self-denial fund. So they actually would stop eating their candy or their gum or their ice cream and actually save that money, and then that's what they actually used to buy this urban center of influence and actually helped to set up this dispensary there in San Francisco. And it was amazing that the young people led this urban mission work in the past, and I'm so glad that One Year in Mission is able to do that same kind of challenge to our world church today, to say on how you will change not only your life and through your service and through your witness, but then also you can give an example to the world church family of how to work the cities in holistic and ongoing ways. There's a handout that I want to leave and you can use in your groups, and again, of other funding sources from the writings of Ellen White. And you can kind of work through this, read it, and then discuss, do we have these businessmen and women as Jesus did in his day? Do we have access to these public spaces? Do we have access to some of these other resources that we maybe have not been thinking about? So take time as a group, work through this, the handout, and then we'd love to hear your feedback, whether through social media, and you can pester Gary about that, Gary Blanchard, our World Church Youth Leader, regarding that. Let's talk about how with our Global Mission initiative, you remember the nice t-shirt that was launched at our Global Youth Leaders Congress in Kassel, Germany. On the back there, it showed a logo, your partner in church planting, and that was from Global Mission. With our Life Hope Center initiative, we are wanting to encourage and invite every youth leader in the cities of 1 million or more to consider this long-term initiative. Now, please be patient with us because, again, some of you are ready to start your restaurant, or you're ready to start, a fitness center or some way that actually meets the needs of the people of the community, and then takes that next step and actually, through small groups, to make disciples. So with this initiative, it will take some time to go through the process, and maybe this first time your team with One Year in Mission in your city might be able to do that contribution during that first 6 months, actually to find the needs. And that would be fine. But the next One Year in Mission team, working through the partnership with your Global Mission and Adventist mission counterpart, whether it's at the local field, the union, and the division, then to seek their counsel to say, would this restaurant or this lifestyle center or this exercise place, would this actually fit? And is it something as a part of the church planting or the urban mission strategy? So there is a way, and you can look at the website. We'll give you that address on the screen as well as in the handout, where you can actually go through that process and understand. I know that because the youth are the tip of the spear of the Adventist church with our urban mission, that you as youth leaders perhaps were on the front edge of hearing of how this partnership between Global Mission and the Youth Ministries Department for these Life Hope Centers or these urban centers of influence. We're using Life Hope Center as a brand. We're encouraging it to be used around the world if it works in your context in your city. But I know that you'll have to be patient with some of our church leaders, whether it's your local pastor, someone at the conference, or even at the union or division, because they didn't have the privilege of joining and being together and hearing from Pastor Ted Wilson, Pastor Gary, Pastor Gilbert Kanji, and our One Year in Mission team in the past of how we're doing this relaunch, or this focus, how One Year in Mission is specifically designed to actually make a contribution to help meet the needs, but then also make disciples in our urban centers. So there is a funding, there's steps there, there's funding proportion, kind of ratios, and with all Global Mission projects, there's a shared funding requirement from the local level, the union, and then also the division. So this will be something that whether you're a local One Year in Mission leader or you're part of the team, please come close to whoever is leading Global Mission or Adventist mission in your local field, so then that way they can help you through this process. I'm working with these applications all around the world right now, and it's exciting to see the creativity that you as young people and these other entities are actually coming with on how we can meet the needs creatively, but then not only meet the needs physically, mentally, or spiritually, but then also to say, what's that next step? just like Jesus did, to actually lead the people from just being a follower, but actually becoming a disciple, and actually to be able then to have, to share the hope that we have as Seventh-day Adventists, the hope of Christ's soon return, and the precious promise of that we are saved through the gospel of grace. I know that you're going to have many questions, and this will be something where please work with your local global mission or Adventist mission contact, whether at the local field, wherever you are, or your union or division. I know that I'm available and to help troubleshoot, and to through email. We could set up a Skype conference or a video conference, so then that week we can actually help with these the practical steps to actually go through the application process. So what it requires, though, is that, let's say we're going to set up a restaurant in Tokyo as an example. I'm working with the team there. So when you're in mission, the contribution would be then to find out, well, talking with the local conference to say, where in Tokyo, Mr. Conference President or Mr. Youth Director at the local field at the conference, where is God, impressing? What doors are open right now? What facilities do we have that we can actually start this vegetarian restaurant? So that's a practical example of to say, how when you're in mission can then align with what the leaders are already thinking and doing. The next thing is to say, as a team with When You're in Mission, well, if we're going to start a restaurant, so how are we going to do that ministry? Because it's one thing to actually start saying, yay, we're going to start something, but what are those practical steps going to be to actually help set up the business side? Then also when we set up restaurants ministry, how are we going to encourage and actually take that next step to then make disciples as a part of that? So those systems, and it will take some time to say, well, what is our part? Are we going to man this? And then who's going to help finance it? And some of those other questions. Continuing on with this, this illustration, there's some helpful proposals that you can actually download from our website. And you can see these links there in the video, as well as part of your handout and your worksheets. You can actually then see what is the portion, what part of this is going to be able to, the conference can do, what part is the union going to do, and what part is the division. We at the GC have already outlined our share, and those details are on the website. In closing, I just want to challenge you as young people, that God has uniquely called you for this time to make a difference in our cities. I remember there in Bangkok with our church planting team that we were leading out with for the 6 years. It was young people like When You're in Mission who actually took time away from their work, took time away from their studies to actually join us. Whether I remember Corey Goodwin, he was a young adult from Canada, and he was a graphic, actually he was an animation major at one of our colleges in the United States. God impressed upon him to say, you know what this community and this part of the city needs is actually a wall mural. And God put this dream on his heart, and so he organized the young people of the community. He organized even some of the homeless guys in the neighborhood, and together they worked to actually, and we found funders for the paint, and we set up the scaffolding and all those other things that were required to actually implement this. And during that 1 month, they actually were able then to paint this beautiful wall mural, 3 stories tall, of Christ and his second coming, depicting those who were ready for the response and those who also were rejected. And so that living witness of art and in that part of the city arrested the attention of that community and started to sow seeds for the gospel. I know that there's many of you who God has called today to use your creativity. So working together with our global mission, Adventist mission counterparts, with the other departments, with PCM, we can actually uplift Jesus higher and higher in our cities. And I can't wait to see how God will use you to help uplift Jesus as the hope of our cities. So my prayers are with you guys, and courage as we go forward to with this mission to the cities with 1 year in mission, because I want this city, and that's what Jesus says. God bless you.